Hello, I'm Richard Ridge for Broadway World. One of this season's most eagerly awaited events is the Broadway opening of the Jeanine Tesori, Lisa Kron musical Fun Home, directed by Sam Gold. And I'm here at Joe's Pub, where the creative team gave us a sneak peek and a Q&A moderated by Tony Award winner Cherry Jones.
Someone just came in the door, like no one I ever saw before. I feel I don't know where you came from. I wish I did. I feel so dumb. I feel your swagger and your bearing and the just right clothes you're wearing, your short hair and your dungarees and your lace-up boots and your keys. Your ring of keys.
Some of the things I remember when Lisa brought this book to my attention, and you know, sometimes we in the theater get slightly hyperbolic. I know that's shocking, but that was a joke. I know that's shocking. So I said, when I read it, and I was really affected by it, and I said, you know, I can't imagine how you turn this into a musical. And I said, so that's why I want to do it. And that, you know, cut to 3 years later, the thing about a musical is you have to love what you're doing, because you're going to get married to it, you're going to go to graduate school with it, you're going to sleep with it and fight with it and try to cut it out of your life. And 4 or 5 years later, that love is the thing that's going to really get you through those times. And I love it even more. The thing that I do love about it is that the three of us are basically the same age. I'd like to think I'm a little younger, but I don't think that's true. Anyway, we're sort of the Mod Squad. And I get to play Julie. Just say thank you for those who remember the Mod Squad. I grew up in this time, and I remember as an Italian in Long Island, and I thought, God, if I could just be Susan Day for one day. She was even named Day, and it pissed me off. Marcia, or any place that they had, when in the Brady Bunch, when they would go out for Christmas, and they would go outside, they would put on a little sweater with a little button there. And meanwhile, in Long Island, we basically looked like mummies, or the Michelin Man going out. And I thought, if I could just get to California, where they live like real people live. So one of those things about those families, and I had a very complicated family myself, I just thought, there's something in me that I think I'm going to store one day and use it. I knew that even at 8 or 9, and it turned out to be this musical. A piece has to be so porous that adding music to it has to deepen it as opposed to take from it. It has to really be like pumice. And you have to be able to add something, because the great fear is that by musicalizing something, you're actually going to take from it, not add to it. And it was the underpinning of such emotion and desire and fear and shame and joy in this piece. I thought, I know something I might be able to contribute to it. And my greatest joy, I think, of the whole thing, besides meeting and working with all these people, and being able to present it here and then uptown, is that it's a musical of its time. It couldn't happen at any other time. And musicals are not often light on their feet, and they don't often meet the time in which they're expressing something. And it's my greatest pleasure that that is one of these pieces. I do feel, in a way, if I don't write another thing, it would be enough. And that's an incredible feeling to have that. So I'm here to announce also my retirement. Not kidding. No. So I would like to thank you also for coming to have cheese and bread and coffee with us. I'm incredibly frightened, and I feel really fragile about this piece, because I've never loved, besides my kid and Lisa Kron, I've never loved anything more. Thank you so much for coming.
Anyone in this room who has not seen Fun Home? Lucky you. Lucky the rest of us who get to see it now as many times as we can afford to. First, I would like to present my credentials. I had sort of a life-altering experience of seeing the presentation presentation, the workshop presentation at Sundance in August of 2012. And then I got to see the workshop presentation at the Public in autumn of 2012. And then I got to see the performance in the Newman 3 times. And I read Alice's book almost immediately after it was published. So I am not an ardent supporter of this musical. I like to think I am the mascot. And that said, I would like to start with the God of Fun Home. And Allison, in the first place, I don't know if all of you know, but Allison was awarded a MacArthur Foundation Genius Grant. It was the first one awarded to a dyke cartoonist. And I would like to say, aren't you glad when you wandered into the city 35 years ago that you were not aware that you would receive the MacArthur Foundation Genius Grant?
Yes.
Yes. Well, I want to ask you a very specific question as an actress, because I think about you drawing. Since you've come into my life in around 27, I thought about you drawing, and I thought about you a lot because we have similar backgrounds in certain ways. But I was wondering that day, where were you when you completed the book? Just physically, where were you?
When I finished, there were so many stages to finishing the book. There was finishing the writing and finishing the drawing. I'm sure I was in my basement in Vermont.
And when was there a moment when you knew you had drawn the last stroke, you'd written the last line, you'd finished the final panel, or were you just tinkering around with it to get it out?
There was definitely a moment when I got the ending of the book. You know, like I don't know how anyone writes endings to anything. They just come to you by some kind of grace if you sit in your chair long enough. No. I was in my chair in my basement in Vermont, and it just happened. Sorry. That's
No, I mean, I assumed that it was something that simple. But I mean, when you sent it off, when you sent it on its way, do you remember, was it just a workaday experience because you've done it all your life? Or was it a very, how did you feel?
No, it felt very profound. It felt like, you know, putting in a package this thing that had really haunted me and troubled me and confused me for a long time. I felt like I was starting to sort it out.
And had you shared it with any of your family members?
Yeah. I showed it to all, and they all knew what was happening.
So before it was sent out, you had that already taken care of.
Yes.
Well then, how did you get, was it an email, was it a letter, was it a phone call when you got the phone call that some folks wanted to turn it into a musical? And what was your immediate response to that?
I was actually on a bike ride, and I had my cell phone in my back of my bike jacket. I was stunned. I mean, I didn't, like you, I didn't imagine how this thing would get turned into a musical, but it was really thrilling and sounded like a good plan.
So you were game from the get-go. You didn't have any, you didn't feel as a mother that you didn't feel fearful of turning your child over.
I didn't, you know, I don't want to go on too much about this, but there was a film offer on the book that I basically rejected because I couldn't bear the thought of a bad movie getting made of this intimate story. And most movies seem to me to be pretty bad, so it seemed like a higher risk. But, you know, I didn't have a lot of relation to theater or to musicals, so it felt like, oh, this is so different. It's fine. It's like, I don't know. Nobody cares about the theater.
Turn into a bad musical.
Well, I guess part of my thinking was if it did become a bad musical, no one would ever see it. So
that's the beauty of musicals that close.
And you did have some emotional connection to the theater because of your mother.
I did, yes.
some of my greatest experiences with my mother were actually seeing you perform on Broadway.
I didn't ask that question.
Really? Because it's written, I saw it.
Well, so it was a safer forum for you.
It felt safe, and like I didn't have any ownership. Like I felt able to completely turn it over. I didn't have any creative input. Like I just was able to give it to them.
And when did you first meet these two? That must have been fun.
Well, I had known Lisa from her Five Lesbian Brothers days, and it was Lisa's involvement with the project that also really convinced me that I wanted to do it. Because I knew.
Twas ever thus. Wherever I go, it's Lisa Kron. Lisa Kron.
Yeah, I don't know if I would have been nearly so, full speed ahead if Lisa wasn't doing this. But I'd known you, and then we met to talk about it, and then eventually you introduced me to Jeanine. And by then you were all hard at work.
I'm the sixth lesbian brother, I'm just saying. Like the peak best of them.
Well, you all spoke so beautifully in the presentation about part of the process, but I would like now a more thorough, sort of thumbnail, nuts and bolts, 3 acts of the process. And Sam, when you make your entrance in this storytelling, you just come right on in. I know that's a general question, but I know you all are good for it.
Well, I had never written lyrics before, except for parody lyrics. I have quite an impressive portfolio of parody lyrics, if anybody's interested. But I had never done this before, and the advice I like to give people when they ask me what I have to say about writing a musical, I say, well, write it with Jeanine Tesori would be my greatest advice I could give any aspiring lyricist. And and Jeanine was incredibly patient teacher, and the structure of this was really, really complicated, and it was. I mean, I always work through trial and error, but this was more trial and error than anything. You just couldn't tell on a page if something would come to life or if it would be dead once it came out of the mouth of an actor. And so, so both Sam and Jeanine, I think all 3 of us have a great tolerance to muck around in things we don't know the answer to, and to put things on stage and try them and see what happens. But as we were beginning to write, Jeanine would say, we'd get to a song and Jeanine would say, I just want you to write me a whole bunch of pages, and I would write a bunch of things, and then she would look down the page and she would say, that's not a lyric, that's not a lyric, that's not a lyric, that's not how lyrics work. And then there would be like 2 lines and she would say, that is a lyric. And I'd be like, all right, let me do more. And that was painstaking, very painstaking process, but it was, fascinating to, and, I think, there is a thing that happens, which when you work on a musical, there's nothing that can compare to it. And seeing what can happen when the lyrics are doing one thing and the music is doing something else. And in this case, this is Allison has written a book about a family who are very, they're not in touch with their truth, and they're not in touch with their true feelings and their true yearnings. And I think even though we couldn't have said exactly why, it's why we felt like this was going to be a musical, because the lyrics can express what they're thinking or what they're saying, and then the music does this other thing, which is to express that which they feel, and in some cases they don't even know it's what they're feeling. And that's a really dynamic and magical thing to get to crack open and put on a stage.
And then Sam came in.
And then Sam came in.
It's actually really fascinating to hear you guys all talk. We've done this all separately, but the 3 of you together, it's great. And there's a couple of things that ring true to me about how we actually, things about you guys that made it possible that the show exists. One is, it seems impossible to me, but true, that you could give over the book the way you just described, giving it over. That this is your life story and your family's life story and secrets and all sorts of things that seem very hard to share publicly to begin with, but then to say, on a bike ride with the phone in your back pocket, all right, it's just a musical. And then you did really trust the process. And the process of making a musical is a windy path. And it seems to me that the combination of your trust and that trust comes at an unfathomable place to me, with the two of your sort of equal size trust in the process, that the musical you made now is so incomprehensible to where you started. You know, who knew what it was going to be, how you'd get there, when you'd get there, and it was very inspiring to see your work ethic and your faith and your strength in getting to the bottom of a very challenging piece of material. That's a long way of getting into where I come in. I happen to, just by great luck, be shoved into like a bed and breakfast with you guys in some writing retreat. We were at Ojai in California on a writing retreat, and you were just starting to try to crack how to tell the story. I don't know that you'd written anything, or if you had, very little, and you were just spending a week sitting around being like, how the hell do we do this? What is the way into this? Where are we going to start? And I was there with another project with no intention of being involved in the project, only purely fascinated with what you guys were doing and the bravery of how you were approaching the process. And so I kind of, like Cherry, I just sort of became a mascot for it. I just thought it was a really, your vision for how to make a unique theatrical experience really enticed me. And to be specific about it, the book takes place in 3 simultaneous time spaces, because a cartoon can do this thing that theater can't do. You're given information in the image, in the caption, and in the writing around it. So you're getting information in 3 different places, and the story comes alive in montage, in juxtaposition. You're seeing things butted up against each other, and you're creating a whole out of many, many things up against each other. And this book does that, like, you know, millions and millions of times over. It's working on a lot of levels simultaneously. And the idea of a musical being able to achieve that, I couldn't imagine it happening, and I wanted to. And so, so that was sort of my way in, was how do we see those simultaneous times and spaces and emotion and the emotional arc of the thing come through in as sophisticated and beautiful a way as the book achieves, without just trying to deliver the book on stage, which who the hell would know how to do that? But if it wasn't for brilliant writers, would have been the route. Most anyone else would have made the book on stage. I don't know what that would really look like, but like what Lisa was saying before, you have to find your own originating impulse, and I came in with the desire to help be a part of that.
Just along those lines, you're being able to help. Do you go to sleep now at night and your dreamscape is circling your head? Are you still scratching, you and your designer, scratching your head over that one, or have you got it solved?
Well, yeah, I got it solved. It's a play in the round, it'll be fine. No, it's one of those things, you know, I'm trying to meet the bravery of the material, and so one piece of bravery would be to try to stage a musical on Broadway fully in the round, which I I don't know. I haven't heard of one
So
since I've been in New York.
Completely round.
Mhm.
It's not going to be 3/4. It's
Yeah, well, and so I can talk a little bit about the impulse for that, which I think is going to be really exciting. You know, we, as I was just saying, trying to crack this thing in a very unique way. It's a memory play. There's multiple worlds coexisting on stage. And fitting that into a proscenium theater was actually a little disappointing for me. The conventions of the proscenium didn't feel like they were really as unique as the material was. So when presented with the opportunity to do this is actually going to be the third complete restaging of Fun Home, actually, when I think about it, because my first way in was I visited Allison in that basement she was talking about working in, and I loved the basement so much that despite that it probably wasn't the right setting for Fun Home the musical, I recreated it in its entirety in the Shiva next door. I got a paint sample to get the right color paint. And I could have done that for years, just a beautiful recreation of your gorgeous writing studio. But anyway, I started with this writing studio, and that wasn't right. It wasn't encompassing all the layers of the book and of the musical. And so as we got into the Newman last year, I started trying to make the memories come alive in a more fluid way, and we wound up in a very empty space in the Newman with things sort of moving all around. The memories are moving around Allison. And then when presented with the opportunity to do it in another space, I thought if we could present it in the round, we could do a much better job of sort of circling the memories around her and lifting the multiple realities simultaneously. It's a challenge orally to be totally in the round, but I think it's going to be much more seamless for me for staging. It's going to be a beautiful way to do it, and it has the other really nice little benefit, which is that I like intimate, small experiences as an audience member, and so there's no show to me that benefits from it being in a bigger theater for the experience with the audience member. I just like intimacy, and it's an intimate story. It's a domestic story. This is not a 60-member dance musical. It's an intimate story, and so moving it uptown, we found a way to, I think, actually make it more intimate than it was in the Newman. Yes, we're loading some stuff in for our workshop next door, so this is simultaneously an event and also a way to buy time until my furniture gets loaded in. But being able to do it at Circle in the Square means actually, instead of having the experience of like, oh man, I got to see it downtown when you were so much more intimate, and it's lost something as the thing has grown momentum. I get to do the opposite thing, which is bring people into an even more intimate and interesting relationship to the show, so that for people who already saw it downtown, they'll have a lot of really good reasons to see it again. And for those who didn't, they won't feel like they missed out on the more intimate version, which is a very nice, it isn't why I did it, but is a very nice benefit, I think, of being in that space. But it does mean now I gotta restage the thing, which, thanks.
do I have time to ask one more question? No one says no, here I go. I just wanted to, Sydney, I know you're not up here, but do you mind just, you can come sit on the step if you want. She went upstage, she snatched it. Being in the audience at the Newman, as an actor, we know that our audiences change night to night. So would you feel a difference in the audience night to night? Did you, and what, I guess my question is, could you feel from the audience what you all were doing to us? Could you feel, could you hear the sobs? Could you?
Yes. I could hear. It was actually, the audience would always be different. Sometimes it would be bigger laughs, sometimes it would be more quiet, but I could definitely hear the crying, and sometimes it was really dark because the lights were shining in my eyes and I couldn't see anything, but I could definitely hear the crying, and it touched me that we touched them.
Yeah. Did you get specific comments from, because I know probably from children it was just about how cool it was that you got to do it, but did you ever get any profound comments from any adults that you remember? Did anyone?
Well, there was like many cool people that I've always wanted to meet, like the people from Smash, a bunch of people, and they came, and it was cool because they're like, Sydney, you were great, and I'm like, thank you. It is such a long time ago.
Well, let me ask you this, and then I just want to ask you all, and we'll have questions from you all. What do you hope? You know what? Let me save this for you all. Yeah, here, you take this. What do you hope will come out of this on Broadway with this large audience? What do you? And I would just like to say that to me it reminds me of Remember of the Wedding. It is a landmark production that I believe will forever change what is possible in musical theater in this country. And I knew it from the moment I saw the presentation at Sundance. Something so unlikely, a subject matter so unlikely, that goes right to the soul of everybody who witnesses it.
Well, I guess, you know, this is, I think, the 8th musical that I've written, and I feel like I'm just now at years old to try to really understand the form. And I feel like there are a lot of places, the spectrum on Broadway, off Broadway, there's a lot of room for a lot of different kinds of musical. This one, to me, is I could only write it at this point in my life, also because I found Lisa as a partner.
Do you feel my heart saying hi? In this whole luncheonette, why am I the only one who sees you're beautiful? No, I mean handsome.
For this one, I think I just love the challenge of putting musicals together. I loved Early Modern Millie and Shrek and Caroline, but this one took everything that I had learned from anything that I had written to say the musical can really do something extraordinary if you stay with it, if you don't condescend to the form. When it's in its vaudeville greatest and people, that is fantastic. But I know how great, first of all, it's made in America and it's an American art form. We own it. Nobody does it better than Americans for this form. I'm sorry I said it, it's true. Maybe. You know, and at the same time, I think the mandate is to push it and push it and push it so that we can do some deep sea diving with this form, not to condescend to it, but question it and push it. And that's why I love working with playwrights on great material, because they understand the way that text can meet the beauty and the abstraction, the oceanic in the musical theater, for which I just aspire to write, like, I just aspire to make it as great as the form I know it is to be. And I think the idea of to bring it to the global spotlight that it is Broadway, and to make it more intimate so that people in relationship are actually closer to it, is something that I find incredibly exciting, and it's not something I've ever been able to do before, and I will just work my little knuckles to the ground in order to do that. So I guess that would be my answer.
For me, you know, I think that what theater does at its best is that it takes, you know, on stage there are these characters who are, you know, come with different ideas and mindsets and needs and desires and parts of the world, and they intersect with each other in unexpected ways. And there is no theater without an audience. There's just an idea of a thing that's going to happen together in the collective consciousness that an audience makes when they watch what happens on stage. And ideally, and it doesn't happen enough, but ideally what happens is that you have that same kind of diversity in the audience that you have on a stage. And so the people sitting in the audience who feel that they have, and in fact, in their experience, have had nothing in common with the people sitting next to them, sit there together and make this thing together and realize that we all live in the same world, that we have a common humanity. And it, as I say, and as we know, it doesn't happen enough in our contemporary theater, but we know when it happens, we can feel it when it happens. And when I also had it, I was extremely fortunate last year to have Fun Home going while I was in Theodore Bessenet's incredible production of Good Person of Szechuan upstairs. And that was also a play in which that happened. And when you feel that, you have that moment of thinking, oh, this is what theater is meant to do. You feel that incredible dynamic. And, you know, I started making theater 30 years ago in the East Village in, you know, small lesbian theater collective, the Wow Cafe. And that was an incredible experience, and throughout these 30 years have, you know, worked in a number of different places and, you know, worked increasingly in, you know, sort of mainstream theater settings. And I think for many years I had the experience of being in kinds of working on pieces that, you know, the lesbians that I came up with would be like, that feels authentic to me, that feels like something I can relate to, and then being in other sorts of theater experiences where a more mainstream audience would say, yes, that feels real to me, that feels like a reflection of a life that I understand, but those two things those two groups didn't feel that way together in the same piece. And so for me, the really extraordinary thing that happened was that those people, you know, the ladies from Westchester who came to see this play, and my 20-something-year-old trans dog walker would sit next to each other. You know, these young queer kids traveled from all over to see this show. They would never think of going to a musical, but they were like, there's something happening there that reflects us. And then they were sitting next to these, you know, these other people, and together they were sort of looking across at each other and thinking, how is this happening, that there's something in common here. And so for me, that's been the incredible experience.
And that would be just your physicality that you're talking. It's going to be so increased at Circle and the Square because you can literally see each other across the forum, you know.